Hello, this is Mr. Huff, and now let's take a moment to talk about SLAM, an easy way to balance equations. SLAM. Split, this is where the produces or the arrow is. You're going to separate your reactants from your products. List, you're going to list the elements on both sides in the center. Add, you're going to add up the number of each element on both sides. You'll do the left side first and then the right side, and then multiply the coefficients on each side until you have the same number of atoms on each side. This might involve a fair amount of guess and check. Let's take an easy one. So we are going to start by writing down the equation. So here we have mercury oxide yielding mercury and oxygen, or producing. So it's really important to make sure you get the elements correct and the subscripts correct, because if you make a mistake copying these here, you can make an equation that may not balance. First thing we're going to do is split, and what I mean by that, we're going to draw a tall rectangle around the arrow and pull it down below the equation so we have room to work. Then we're going to list. On each side we have mercury, Hg, and O, oxygen. Then we're going to add, and in this case there's nothing to add, we just count really. So on the left side we have 1 mercury and 1 oxygen. On the right side we have 1 mercury and 2 oxygens. So what do we have to do to make it balance? Now we're going to multiply the coefficients. Well, I have 2 oxygens on the right side. I need 2 oxygens on the left side. So I'm going to multiply by 2. So I put a 2 right here, and I write down that there are now 2 mercuries and 2 oxygens. On the right side, now I have 2 mercuries on the left side. On the right side, I have to put a 2 to make it where I have 2 mercuries on this side. Notice how when I'm through with a number, I cross it out and write the new number to the left or to the right. The other thing I'm going to do is put this one in this blank to just show that I have thought about that there's only one of those. So if you look at this, I have 2 mercuries and 2 oxygens, so this equation is balanced. I would write the final equation like this. 2HgO produces 2Hg plus O2. Let's look at a little more complicated example. Let's consider this equation. This shows us that we have water plus carbon dioxide is going to produce this sugar plus oxygen. This is the formula for photosynthesis that you learned or will learn about in biology. So the first thing we're going to do is split. So we draw a rectangle around the arrow, draw it down below the arrow so that we have room to work. And then we list the elements on the left and right side. So if we just look at the left side, we have H for hydrogen, O for oxygen, and C for carbon. Make sure there's no additional elements on the other side, but it should be a match. Next we add, so we've done split, list, now we're going to add. So we're going to add up the elements on both sides of the equation. So we look across here, we have 2 hydrogens, we have 1 plus 2 oxygens, and 1 carbon. Notice that I do not want you to write 3 right here. I want you to write 1 plus 2. What this does is it will remind you that you have oxygen in the water and also oxygen in the carbon dioxide. Let's look at the other side of the equation. Right here we see 12 hydrogens, 6 plus 2 oxygens, and 6 carbons. Alright, so now we have to make this balance. Looking at the hydrogens, there's 12 on the right side, we have 2 on the left side. So if we multiply 12 times 6, we get 12, or 2 times 6, we get 12. So we put a 6 here in the coefficient. But that also changes the number of oxygens, so we update these numbers here. Cross out the ones you're not using anymore. 6 times 2 is 12. Cross out the 2. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 2, so we write 6 plus 2, cross out the 1 plus 2 because those are not true anymore. And now we're left with 1 versus 6. How are we going to make 6 on this side? So we could put a 6 here. 6 times 1 gives us 6, but that also changes the number of oxygen. 6 times 2. This time we have 6 plus 12. Cross this out because it's not true anymore. Now if we look at this, is it balanced? We have 12 and 12, 6 plus 12, 6 plus 2, and 6 and 6. So we have this one left over. Notice that I saved the diatomic oxygen, this one, for last. The reason I want to do him last is because I can put any number here and not change the other numbers. So that means if we need 6 plus 12, we need to change the 2 into a 12. So 6 times 2 gives us 12. Cross out 6 plus 2, and now you have 6 plus 12. One last thing, just to show that you thought about it, right here we have a blank. Let's just write a 1 in there for this process. So if you're doing a worksheet like this where you have a bunch of blanks, you're going to put 1s for anything that's blank. And if you're writing the equation, you're not going to include the 1. You would just include the molecule. So our final equation is 6 waters plus 6 carbon dioxides produces 1 sugar molecule and 6 oxygens molecules. Okay. And that's all we have for today. So that is a short explanation of how to do SLAM, split, list, add, and multiply.